08-09 season, which began with such promise, has ended. In Anaheim and inside Honda Center, Ralph Strangis and Darrell Ray to talk about this season where so many injuries derailed it, and also some stuff early in the season with Sean Avery and all kinds of other things happening throughout the year. But for the Dallas Stars, there were a lot of bright spots, especially the youngsters.
Yeah, I think the kids were the bright spot this season. When you get an opportunity because of other people's misfortune, whether it's injuries or trades or whatever, that opportunity's there. Not many guys, though, seize it. And they had some young guys step in, and it's sort of the mindset, I think, of the brain trust here, led by Les Jackson, that the young guys have to play. Big believer in Louis Eriksson, who scored 14 goals last season, erupted for close to 40 this year, finishes with 36. He played about 6 more minutes a game than he did last season, and his shooting percentage went through the roof. James Neal comes on the scene after a year in the American Hockey League. Played a lot with Mike Modano, especially in the first half of the season, which helped him. Showed that he can score at this level and compete at this level. He finishes with 24 goals this season. Another wild, bright spot for the Stars. And then the guy who came in with all the notoriety and the marquee, Fabian Brunstrom, a big free agent signing last year. His first year in North America was a big learning curve for him. 2 years ago, 3rd division in Sweden. This year he comes to North America, ends up scoring 17 goals, leads all NHL rookies with 5 game winners, and looked like he was getting better as the season came to a conclusion. So there's a lot of reason to believe that going forward as the Stars get healthier, and they'll be healthier next season, that this growth hormone that they got for these guys, now they're going to have to make sure they don't take a step back, because we saw that from the defensemen last year. Niskanen, Grossman, Fistrick came in, played marvelously in the regular season and in the playoffs, and then stumbled a little bit early in the season. The good thing for forwards is you have defensemen behind you when you stumble, and you have a goaltender behind the defenseman behind you when you stumble, and that helps.
Well, for the Dallas Stars this season, again, they won't be going to the playoffs. And Razor, it's sometimes tough to talk about an MVP on a team that isn't going to make it to the playoffs. But the Dallas Stars have at least a couple of guys that are in contention for it.
Well, every team has a most valuable player, and for me, it was an easy one this season. I think it was Steve Ott, but the other guy that would vie with him for that would be Mike Ribeiro. I mean, what more would you want from Ott, who got healthy this season for the first time in maybe 2 years? How many nights did we talk about it, or Craig Ludwig on our post-game show? They needed a few more Steve Otts in the game tonight. Unfortunately, he stuck out like a sore thumb a lot of nights because of his passionate, physical, driving play. You saw it here again tonight in Anaheim in the finale. He was phenomenal. And then Ribeiro with the offense. It was a year where they had a lot of their offense out of the bag on a lot of nights, and he continued to produce. He finished top 10 in assists last season, top 10 again this season in assists in the National Hockey League. The goal scoring dribbled off a little bit, no question about that. But most nights, he was the guy that produced. No matter who was on his wings, he would set him up. And pretty impressive stuff from the two of them all season long. I'm just a Steve Ott fan. I like that style of hockey. I like him as a person. I thought he was outstanding this year.
Well, and for the Dallas Stars, they're going to have some decisions to be made here in the off-season, Razor, talking about the unrestricted free agents. They have a pretty good amount there, and a couple of guys that lead the charge, Sergei Zubov and Yuri Letnin. I think they'd like to have them both. Well,
probably. You get to a point, and it's a terrible thing to even have to discuss, that at some point you have to say goodbye to everybody. Sergei, I think, can still help anybody, especially on the power play, and that was a major issue for the Stars this season, but he is pushing 40. You've got him and Sador and some of these others who are around in '99 when they won a cup. Letnin's got to get healthy. I think a 4.5-month summer, although it stings for Stars fans, is going to really help Yuri Letnin. I would be shocked if he wasn't back in a Stars uniform next season. He can still do a lot of things. He had a rough end of the season. He admitted himself, though, physically and mentally, he was completely beat up. Not the 30-goal scorer that he was a couple of years ago. Still a hard worker, still a smart guy from the neck up. Speaking of some sagaciousness in that regard, cerebrally, Sergei Zubov. He played 10 games this year, and they missed him. They missed him in a lot of different areas. He gets most of his notoriety for his play with the puck and on the power play. He's a tremendous defender and an excellent penalty killer too. But the problem they have, I think, going forward as a brain trust is trying to figure out, because you can't get yourself into a spot where you leave a spot open for some of these aging veterans and they break down on you again, and then all of a sudden you're shoving other guys that might not be ready for it up into those spots. So if the numbers work out right, certainly from a, you know, we owe you, you owe us, we like you like us standpoint, I would think they'd be back along with Daryl Sydor. Some of the other ones, who knows where they're going to end up. There's a lot of them, 8 total, I think, for the Stars. I know they want to go young. I know they want to go fast, but going young and going fast all at once sometimes can be a bad thing.
Well, and so the Dallas Stars will look forward to the 09-10 season, and probably number 9 will be back. There's been, you know, some noise made. It's been a frustrating season for him for sure. But you know, in all likelihood, we'll see him next season again with the Stars.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if he didn't come back. I'd be surprised if he didn't come back and play well, too. You know, look at him here tonight. You know, there's a pretty good indication. Unlike a lot of his peers, Mike Modano is perfectly healthy, you know, relatively speaking at this point after an 82-game schedule. But he's not fighting a lot of ailments. You know, father time catches up to everybody, and your skills erode a little bit. Even a guy like Brett Hull in his final days, you're talking about a 700-goal scorer that didn't look even close to a 700-goal scorer at the end when he finally called it quits. Some of that has left Mike's game. I think the big thing that crippled him in the latter half this year, though, was just the passion went out of his game, because he realized they're smart guys. 1,700 games tells you something after a while. He's played lots of important playoffs and international hockey. He knew they weren't good enough to go where they wanted to go. It was frustrating and disappointing. It affected him mentally and physically on the ice. He wasn't the same player in the second half, but he was tremendous in the opening couple of months of the season this year.
Well, we're both unhappy that we won't be calling any playoff games for you, but even through all of this stuff this season, Razor, it was, you know, it was a lot of fun. There was a lot to talk about.
It was a lot of work, is what it was.
but there was a lot to talk about. A lot of neat stories out there too, as we talked about with the kids and that. And you know, the Dallas Stars fans too. You're talking to the fans, and they get it. They know what happened this year, and they're looking forward to next year.
Right. You know, I think everybody going forward has to be careful that they don't look at this sort of myopically and pick out all the failures in that. What's that old saying that you don't want to hug your I'll grab it here.
Where is it?
Where the hell is it? It's late. It's late in the season here. Don't hug your failures. Analyze your successes.
There you go.
Kabang. I think that's what they need to do going forward, is make sure you just don't look at the negatives and look at the negatives. Look at the things that worked out well for them and move forward that way. Pretty obvious that the personnel decision that messed things up early, because there was a lot of disdain, I think, both for the personnel when Sean Avery came in here and also for just the season itself. They came into training camp like they'd won something. They're the first team ever, I think, that had a Stanley Cup hangover from getting to the conference final. And they played that way. They acted like they were tired in that, and by the time they got their act together, they got it together, looked like a playoff team, and then the injuries just eroded any opportunity to gain enough points to get in. But Les Jackson said it at the beginning of the year. I wrote down this quote today, and he was very prophetic prior to this season. Getting to be one of the top 8 is going to be a challenge. To maintain your position, you need to be a consistent performer. The power play is going to have to be a factor, as is goaltending. And when you look back, you know, in hindsight, those were 2 areas that probably could have got them into the postseason, but they were weaknesses, not strengths. And next year they're going to have to be strengths again, or they're going to struggle like they did this year.
We're going to embrace the strengths.
Yes.
We're not hugging the weaknesses.
No.
All right. So for Darrell Ray and the very best crew any 2 broadcasters could hope to work with, I'm Ralph Strangis, and for the final time in the 08-09 season, this is the last time we say good night.
To make it when my time, you'll be everything you
Sneaking in, he's got it, he shoots, he's got it!